Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Mini Books Podcast with your host Gloria and Rogan, and today we are excited to dive into Special Book with You. We picked this one because it has really important lessons to share and we can't wait to talk about them. So let's get started.
Ready to learn how to learn better.
Always.
Today we're diving deep into Power Up Your Mind by Bill Lucas. It's like a user's manual for your brain.
I love that. A user's manual. That's exactly what it is.
You know how we're bombarded with information these days?
Oh, yeah.
Lucas gives us these brain-based tips to learn faster. Who doesn't want that, right?
Sign me up. What I really liked is how he uses all these examples from business leaders.
It's like this stuff really works in the real world.
Yeah.
And one of the things that struck me early on was this idea that most of us know more about how our car engines work
Right.
than our own brains.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy when you think about it like that.
It really is.
It's like we skip over this whole part of how do we actually learn.
It's like we spent all this time learning to read and write, but no time learning how to learn.
Right, exactly. It's like Lucas even says trying to learn without understanding your brain is like trying to, light a fire with two sticks.
Exactly. So let's unpack this brain of ours a little bit.
Yeah.
What really stood out to you about how Lucas kind of breaks it down?
Well, I think the way he talks about the three different brains, the reptilian brain,
Okay.
the mammalian brain, and the learning brain, and how they all kind of work together. Because, sometimes you're trying to learn something,
Yeah.
but you're also feeling really anxious.
Oh, for sure.
And so then that kind of takes over, and it's harder to learn.
So it's not just about like flipping on the switch
Right.
of the learning part of the brain.
Yeah.
It's about understanding how these other parts
Absolutely.
might be impacting it too.
Yeah. It's like if you were, let's say you had to give a presentation
Okay.
and you were really nervous about it.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to memorize what you're going to say, but your heart's racing
Right.
because you're afraid of public speaking. So your reptilian brain is like, danger, danger.
Fight or flight.
Exactly. So then it's going to be much harder to learn.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And that actually leads into another point that Lucas makes about our brains thriving on patterns,
Yes.
but struggling under stress.
Absolutely. Like the more we can understand the patterns
Yeah.
of, how things work, the easier it is to remember things and take in new information.
Right.
But then as soon as that stress kicks in,
Yep.
it's like it all goes out the window.
Totally. Like when you're trying to remember something simple,
Oh, I hate that.
but you're under pressure and you just totally blank.
Oh, yeah. I've totally been there. And Lucas actually, he mentions this study where people were under pressure
Okay.
and they started misspelling words that they normally knew how to spell.
Wow.
Isn't that wild?
That's really interesting.
Stress just throws everything off.
So we've talked about how our brain works, but what about that thing that gets us learning in the first place?
You mean motivation?
Exactly.
Okay.
And this is where it gets really interesting because Lucas has this formula. Readiness plus value plus probability plus impact equals motivation. It's like the key to your inner learning machine.
I like that. Okay,
Yeah.
so break that down for me.
Okay, so readiness.
Yeah.
Like, are you in the right headspace?
Okay, yeah.
Are you mentally, emotionally prepared to learn this new thing? Value. How important is this to you?
Okay.
Does it fit with your goals? Is it something you're curious about?
Right. Because why learn it if it's not important to you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Probability. How likely are you to actually succeed at learning this?
Okay.
And impact.
Yeah.
What's the payoff going to be? How is this going to change your life for the better?
Yeah. Okay.
So if you are feeling good and ready to go, you see the value in it, you think you can do it, and you can see how it's going to have a good impact. Boom, you're set. You've got the motivation.
You're good to go. I like that because I feel like sometimes, even if you're not sure if you're going to succeed, but the value is high enough, that can kind of propel you forward.
Totally.
You're like, I'm just going to go for it.
Yeah,
because it's really important to me.
It's like that saying, where there's a will, there's a way. But in this case, it's more like, where there's value, there's a way.
Yeah, there you go. I love that. And that actually, it made me think of this quote from the book by Chris Argyris. He says, "Success in the marketplace increasingly depends on learning, yet most people don't know how to learn."
So true. We're always told to upskill, adapt.
Yeah.
But nobody teaches us how to do it.
Exactly. And that's where this whole idea of learnacy comes in, which I love.
Wow.
Lucas gives us a framework, and it's the 5 R's.
The 5 R's.
Yes. Resilience, resourcefulness, reflectiveness, remembering, and responsiveness.
Okay.
And he goes into each one in depth. He gives you tools. It's very practical.
So it's not just these big ideas. He actually gives you things you can do.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's break down the 5 R's a little bit. Resilience.
Yeah.
So that's basically bouncing back from mistakes, right?
Yeah, like not letting one little thing derail you. You just kind of keep going.
Okay, and then resourcefulness. I'm thinking that's being able to find the information you need.
Yeah, being resourceful. Finding a book, taking a class online, or knowing who to ask for help, right?
Exactly.
Sorry to interrupt you guys. If you're enjoying this podcast, then don't forget to check out our official YouTube channel, Mini Books Podcast, and subscribe for more great podcasts like this one.
And then reflectiveness.
Yeah, that's a really important one. Taking time to pause.
Okay.
Think about what you learned. How does it relate to what you already know?
Right, because it's so easy to just keep taking in information and not really absorbing it.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And then remembering.
Okay, that was kind of self-explanatory.
Yeah, exactly. But
Wow.
he gives you all these really cool tips about how to actually remember things.
Like mnemonics and...
Yes, exactly. And then the last one is responsiveness. So you've learned something, you've reflected on it.
Now what?
Now what? Yeah, what are you going to do with that information?
It makes me think of that Darwin quote. It's not the strongest of the species that survives, but the one most responsive to change.
Oh, that's so good.
And it's true, right?
It is.
That responsiveness comes from learning
Yeah.
and then being willing to adapt.
Yes.
It's not enough to just have the knowledge.
right.
We've got to be willing to use it. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
Lucas talks about this thing. He calls it change blindness.
Okay.
And it's like this. He gave this example of students watching a video,
Okay.
and they're supposed to be counting how many times the basketball players pass the ball.
Right.
But in the middle of it, a gorilla walks through,
What?
and they miss it.
They don't see the gorilla.
They don't see it because they're so focused on counting the passes.
Oh, wow.
And it's like
great.
our brains can get so locked in
Yeah.
that we miss what's right in front of us.
That's wild. It's like having blinders on almost.
Exactly. And I think that's so important when it comes to learning.
Yes.
Because we have to be open to these new ideas.
Absolutely.
And Lucas talks about how important it is to be curious and ask questions.
Yeah, and be okay with things being a little messy.
Yeah.
Because learning isn't always a straight line.
It's not.
Yeah?
And he actually acknowledges, too, that there's some real barriers.
Oh, yeah.
Like fear of failure,
Yeah.
not having enough time.
Right.
Even just like being in a place where people aren't really encouraging you to learn.
Exactly. It's hard to learn if you're not in an environment that supports it.
Yeah. But he doesn't just leave us hanging. He gives us solutions.
Yeah. He tells you, like, set small goals.
Okay.
Break those big goals down.
Yeah.
Find little ways to fit it into your day.
Even if it's just for a few minutes.
Exactly.
Find what works for you.
Yeah. Find your groove.
Yeah, I love that. And he says it doesn't have to be this formal thing.
No.
Learning can be fun.
It should be fun.
So before we wrap up, I want to leave people with this one last thought.
Okay.
This idea of learned possibility.
Ooh, I like that. What is that?
It's this idea that we aren't limited by, our current abilities.
Okay.
Like we can learn and grow beyond what we think we're capable of.
Oh, I love that. It's very empowering.
It is empowering.
Yeah.
It's not about being like unrealistically optimistic.
Right.
It's about understanding what the brain can do.
Yeah, and believing that you can do it.
Okay, so we have covered so much today.
We have.
But ultimately, it's up to each person
Yeah,
to take this and run with it.
absolutely. Take what works for you, leave the rest.
Find what works for you.
Exactly.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive
Yes, thank you.
into Power Up Your Mind. We hope that you have learned something
Yes.
that you can use.
And had some fun along the way.
Yes. And if you want to keep learning more about how to make learning fun,
Yes.
we will be continuing this conversation online.
Please do.
So until next time, happy learning.
Happy learning, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this conversation and want to dive into more book insights and key learnings, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Mini Books Podcast, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. We're back every Sunday at 9 a.m. with new books and more to learn from. Until next time, take care, keep learning, and keep growing. Remember, this is Mini Books Podcast.